Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 37 of the 40k Badcast. My name is Dan Boyd, and I'm joined, as always, by one of my top friendos, Chumbawamba McLimpbiscuit.
Well, you may be trying to knock me down, but I'm gonna get back up again.
There you go.
And I'm gonna keep rolling my way through the rest of this podcast.
You can't defeat him, folks. He's in it. Does it all for the nookie? I don't know.
I take another shot, then I take another shot.
Did you know that Limp Bizkit is from Jacksonville, Florida?
No, I didn't, but that's the least surprising thing I could have ever been told.
Has anything good ever come out of Jacksonville, Florida?
Ooh, listeners, write in if you're from Jacksonville, Florida. We're calling y'all out.
Contact at 40kbadcast.com and tell us about Jacksonville and how you feel about it. I know there's like a big Navy presence there.
Yeah, you're not really doing much for me here with that one. That being said, my grandma would keep being like, you should come to St. Augustine. St. Augustine is the greatest place in the world. I love St. Augustine. The center of the universe is in St. Augustine. Come see our flowers. And I'm like, nah, I'm good.
I'm going to guess, and I don't know, but St. Augustine is also in Florida?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry I didn't really put that out there. Yeah, no, St. Augustine, it's my favorite town in Colorado. No, yeah.
Is it in northern Florida?
I don't fucking know. I never went. My grandma complained. She's like, well, some of my grandchildren call. Guess what? She only has 2, and I'm not the one who calls.
Oh, she only has 2.
Anyway, let's go forward about how I'm a failure of a grandson, among other things, and talk about Warhammer 40,000.
You know what you could do before we actually start the show? You know what you could do that would bring you right back into her good graces? Give her a great grandchild.
Oh.
Just be like, hey, grandma, guess what? You might hate me, but I procreated. And then she would be all over it.
She has 2 great grandkiddies, and that's good enough for her.
Okay. Well, let's move on and stop talking about fucking Jacksonville, Florida.
Or any part of Florida, for that matter.
And let's get into the aspects where we talk about what's on our hobby radar. Campbell, I have recently completed what I think is probably the best character model I've ever done.
No kidding.
It's the Primaris Librarian. And if you follow me on Twitter, then you have seen pictures of it. I used a lot of the techniques I learned in Roman Lepat's class that I took at Nova. And I think that this fella looks pretty darn cool, if I do say so myself. I did myself? Nice. I did some OSL on his hand. Never done OSL before. Little flame lighting on his hand. He's got that blue armor. Blue armor is nice to paint.
That's choice. Blue is so fun to paint. I don't just paint it because I'm an Ultramarines fanboy. It's just a really comfortable color to paint.
Yeah, so it was a great time painting that thing, and so happy about how it came out. So, Twitter at DB_sleazy. Fucking check it out, nerds. What you got?
Well, I'm kind of a little bit at sea post Nova. Like, after pumping out 2,000 points of shit in 2 months or whatever, and just playing a ton of games and seeing all this hobby stuff going on, I'm just kind of not entirely sure what to do next. So I'm kind of floating around little projects that have just kind of been, never the focus of anything. So I built, primed, painted the Munitorum armored containers, which were super fun, just getting to play with weathering and different techniques and different mediums on those guys. I also built like the Garden of Moor, which is just that graveyard I've had for fucking ever. The Death Knell Watch for Warhammer Fantasy, which is one of the worst plastic kits I've ever assembled.
How come?
It's from that same era as like the Arcane Ruins and all that like 2010 era Warhammer Fantasy terrain that's all made in China before they really got their making shit in China shit down. And the gaps are enormous. Nothing lines up. Everything's a little bit warped. The detail's fine. The plastic material itself is fine. It's just awful to put together, and everything is full of gaps. So all these big gaps, I just had to green stuff over, and I'm just going to paint them to look like moss because there's no way I can make them look natural otherwise.
Could you say gaps a couple more times for me?
Ooh, let's see. Gaps. The gap of Rohan.
Gaps.
The gap at the Cambridge Side Galleria. The gap in between my front teeth. And the gap in my employment circa 2011.
What up?
Otherwise, I also built and painted Belladonna, the Necromunda mercenary bounty hunter. That's it.
There you go.
That figure, I'll be talking about her more later in another segment, but she was a ton of fun. There's just so many different materials and different ways to paint them and different textures on that model. I haven't spent like a week and a half painting a character model in God knows how long, and it was fantastic.
Well, you painted some terrain, and I painted some terrain. I painted all of the stuff that comes in the Necromunda Underhive box set, which turned out really good. I didn't take pictures of it because, well, it's just fucking terrain, and I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy with it. Thing is, though, painting that stuff was boring as hell.
Did you at least paint the boxes, like the little ammo crates, different colors or anything? Or
no, dude. I assembly lined the shit out of that stuff. I was like, spray lead belcher on everything. And then, like, washes. Then Necron compound. And then a little bit of details here and there. Like, it was... I mean, it looked good. It's up to my normal standards, you know? But it's just boring.
Tell me how you feel about cage lights.
Oh my fucking God. Why? Okay. You're doing this. You're baiting me, and it's working.
I'm a master at baiting.
Fucking hate. Oh, that was really funny. I'm sorry. I was stepping on that really good masturbation joke. I fucking hate cage lights so fucking much. And Games Workshop, they put them on fucking everything. Every empirical vehicle.
What's an empirical example of an imperial vehicle in which there was a cage light?
Land Raiders, Repulsors, Predators,
Space Marine bikes.
Space Marine. Oh yeah, they do. Don't
Going
they?
back that far.
So the Necromunda doors have these little cage lights in the corner, and I just fucking hate painting cage lights because I can't just fucking let it go, you know, and just paint the whole thing like red or yellow or whatever and say, oh, these little cages are they're just reflecting the red, so you don't have to paint them. Nope, can't do it. Can't fucking do it, Campbell. I just can't fucking do it. Got to paint the little cages silver and the shit inside red, and it takes forever, and I keep fucking up, and I hate it. And oh my God, dude.
Okay,
fucking cage lights.
Two ways around that. One would be to do like a poor man's OSL and just fucking dry brush the whole area around it red and just be like, it's a really bright light. Or do what I usually do for my cage lights, which cage is going up there with gap for word said most so far in this episode, where I just paint it white and
Someone
then
needs to do a word cloud for us. It's gonna be like fuck is the biggest one, followed by gap.
I don't think I've ever seen a word cloud without the word
Welcome to the
solutions in
fuck
it.
gap. There it is.
Episode 37, the fuck gap. You heard it here first.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. First, the awesome masturbation joke that you did. That was just super funny. And
I haven't been making that same joke since I was 11. I have not. I first made that joke when like a friend of mine was playing EverQuest, and he was like, "I love fishing in the game." I'm like, "Oh yeah, do you use bait?" He's like, "Of course I do. That's the only way I can catch good fish." I'm like, "So would you say you've mastered this technique?" He's like, "Yeah, I'd say so." And I was like, "So you're a masturbator?" And he's like, "I don't get it."
Why am I laughing? I knew what
because
the
you're
was.
A fucking child, much like myself.
Okay, so how do you do your cage lights?
Okay, so when I do them on like my Land Raider and all that, all my Black Templars, I pick them all out in like a light blue. I just paint the whole thing white. So using Ulthuan Gray or Celestial Gray, whatever the fuck. And then I just do a blue glaze. Not boo gaze, blue glaze with Gilman blue.
A goo blaze.
Oh, gooing and blazing, two of my favorite verbs. Anyway.
I'm so glad you said two of my and followed it up with favorite verbs and not favorite activity.
If you listen to the 40k Badcast, you'll know I'm famously bad at drugs, so it's not exactly my favorite activities. God. Anywho, yeah, blue glaze, Gilman blue over white. You're fucking done. Then I just get a really fine brush and paint the cage with metal color, and it's good. It's all there is to it. The glaze settles into the recesses just fine. If you want to use a yellow glaze instead, you'll still get the bright white at the center without having to like pick it out really neatly. Just a glaze over white. You're done. Next topic. Fuck.
Boo glaze. Okay. Yeah. Well. Cool. Thanks for that. You're helping. It's very helpful little bit there. I also started in on my next batch of Orlocks for my Hulkamaniacs. I got a couple of base coats down on them, and they are, I mean, they look like shit right now, but they'll get there eventually. This I am remembering though, this paint job looks like complete ass until I'm like 90% done.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah. So it's like one of these things where you know, it's about motivation. Like, I'm like, fuck, just like blocking red on like headbands or something. I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't want to do this tonight, but trying to get that hour a night in.
Yeah, that's me right now, not wanting to do shit, because my old Goliaths, the team reheated meat, the leftovers, the butcher's block, whatever you want to call them, the ones I brought to the ham slam at Peter's place, they're really low contrast. Like, I just tried to go for a limited palette, and as a result, I just made them look kind of like a brown blob if you're not looking at them very up close with very good lighting.
Yeah, did you say that you were adding some colors to them?
Yeah, I'm repainting all the armor plates yellow. So their weapons are still rusty. They still have rusty details, like their collars and their backpacks and all that stuff are still rusty. But I'm picking out their armor in yellow with like a black trim, which is just super industrial looking. But I want to try to make those stand out and also get a little bit of weathering on them, because I realized I have the Goliath weapon pack, and I know there's that Goliath special character coming down way down the line. We've seen preview images of them and all that stuff. And I'm just having a hard time motivating myself to actually paint those guys because my scheme is so uninspiring to me. So I'm trying to touch
the
it up.
Goliath weapon pack is already out.
No, I have it.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm holding it, and I'm like, nah, not now. And I just put it back, and I've been doing that since I painted these guys or since I bought it or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, so working on those guys right now. And I also actually built all the Necromunda box set terrain, although I left the lids off the boxes so I can flip it upside down, so it can either be the bomb or the supply cache.
Yeah, I glued the lids on the boxes before I read that part.
Yeah.
Because I'm super smart. And I don't really give a fuck, because you can just like place the little bomb thing on top of the box. It's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah,
and
honestly.
I was like, I looked at the inside of the boxes, and there's like guns and ammos and grenades and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to fucking paint this.
That's just going to be like bullet gun metal, black wash, dry brush, close the lid.
I don't paint this bullshit. But yeah, no, it's cool. Like, I've got a Necromunda game coming up tomorrow, and we are recording, what is it, 20th of September? 20th, 21st, 20th, yeah.
There's your bi-weekly or bi-monthly peek behind the kimono.
Yeah, it's good. The Necromunda terrain looks good. I got a game coming up tomorrow, and I'm excited to play with actual painted scenery. I think it's going to elevate the game a little bit, make it look really cool.
It really does. I was kind of holding off on painting it because, especially when I was at Nova and I saw there's what I think should have probably won one of the Capital Palette Awards. It was this diorama, and it was an Escher gang, and they had this the background was all the Necromunda bulkheads, the new ones, with this really nicely integrated, very realistic looking. Like, if you ever looked at the old dioramas from way back in the day in White Dwarf and all that stuff, it looked a lot like that sort of thing. And I was like, I should save these and do that. And I'm like, when the fuck am I going to do that? I'm not going to do that. I want to play with this stuff.
Right, I'm not going to fucking do that.
If I want to do that, I'll buy another set of them, because they actually sell them separately, which is nice.
I've been thinking a lot about Cinco de Necro.
Ooh, yeah. God, that name's so good.
So, listeners, we're going to go do a Necromunda weekend in May this year. Fucking guess when. And I don't know. I'm like, it's in May of 2019. We're months and months away, but I'm already getting excited about it.
Start building up that relationship capital now.
Well, I mean, Adepticon technically goes into April.
Yeah, just a little bit. That's all right.
Yeah, whatever. It's cool. I'll die alone anyways. So
it's all right. I'll always be here for you.
Thanks, baby. Have you played any games since we last recorded? Did you really?
Yeah, I actually did. I played against Rob, the co-author of Fast Times at Terra High. Terra High. So he was in town for a conference, and I was like, this is like 2 days after I got back from Nova, or it felt like 2 days after I got back from Nova. I was very much not in the mood to actually play, but I'm like, you know what? How often are Rob and I in the same zip code? So we decided to throw it down. He brought his like 3rd edition Night Lords, and I decided to roll out my 2nd edition Ultramarines. So you figure we both have shitty armies, like armies that are not optimized whatsoever. Like his has tons of Raptors, and mine has a fucking Vindicator, which I painted like 4 years ago and fielded for the first time this game. And he pulled a Plant Strike mission out of Chapter Approved. At which point I realized that not having Chapter Approved is apparently an offense.
I've said for like almost a year now that Chapter Approved 2017 is fun and rules, and it's got great missions in it. And your dumbass the whole time was just like, oh, I'll maybe pick it up, but fucking whatever.
I looked at it one time and saw the different points values and put them down in a Google spreadsheet, and that's just what I got from it. Either way, we played this plan strike missions where I had these 3 bunkers, and he's like, oh, he puts a gun turret on top of one. I'm like, what's that? He's like, well, bastions have gun turrets on them. I'm like, well, this one doesn't, because that was like, this is the cardboard 2nd edition bunkers.
Well, fuck you, Rob. This one doesn't, okay?
I don't need the help.
You're not my real dad.
Don't need the crush you're giving me. So I played as defenders. I'm in the 3 bunkers, and he attacked with all his dudes in deep strike. And he does this orbital bombardment that nukes my assault marines and like nothing else. And from there on out, I don't think any verb exists for how badly I thrashed him beyond maybe dumpstered, because I have never seen such bad dice rolls in my life. Like, he would have 6 bolter shots hitting on 3s, and he'd miss with 4 of them and then fail to wound with both of them on whatever he was shooting at. He accidentally deep struck all his guys 9 inches away instead of 6 inches away. And I mean, guys, you know what a difference 3 inches makes. And
fellas in the house, can I get a hell yeah?
So yeah, he was at disadvantage there because he didn't start deep striking within the right range until like turn 3 when everything was pretty much already on the table, except for his dreadnought, which just comes on and I just blow it to pieces.
He's like a good 40k player too.
I know, and he's like, dude, stop roasting my dread.
Did you get him like way fucking drunk before y'all played or something?
No. His dice were the worst dice I've ever fucking seen. Like, oh, Jesus. I was actually like doubled over laughing at how fucking bad his dice were. Like, when his raptors jump on top of the bastion and they shoot it with their melta guns and they fucking miss. And I'm just picturing a guy on top of a building aiming at the floor and still missing. And that was the entire fucking
Slips
thing.
on a fucking banana peel.
Yeah. Oh, although my favorite part happened when so the last time he and I played was in 7th edition, maybe even 6th, at Peter's house during the first time I went down for a ham slam, and I had a Thunderfire cannon, and every turn that thing would kill like 16 Chaos Marines. It was the most stupidly effective thing out there. So he kind of made it like, oh, fuck that guy in particular, and was trying to kill it. So he charges it with his Terminators, has someone else fight. And I'm like, I'm going to interrupt.
Yes.
And the Tech Marine proceeds to kill all the Terminators with the servo claw and his power axe.
Are you for real?
Yeah. And then he charges it with his bikes and they only do 1 wound and he still stands there and is able to fight for a while longer. He eventually killed it, but it was really fun. It was an actually bad game, I think, but it was very, very fun to play. And if you do want to read a battle report of it, he did write it up on Goonhammer, which I will link in the show notes. It is a super funny battle report. Rob's a great dude, and I hope someday we can play a game that is something resembling even.
So, Rob, quick message to you, bud. It's one thing if I lose to Campbell at 40k because I am a noted bad 40k player, but you got to do better.
Ooh, call out.
Call out.
Again,
also,
big fan of call out culture when I'm not the one being called out.
Well, that being said, how many of his models did you destroy with your terrible dice rolling?
I feel like I knocked over at least 1, but I didn't knock anything over from the top of a building.
I'm going to buy
they
you
were all metal,
a fucking
though.
dice tower. I'm going to buy you a dice tower, and I'm going to ask nicely that you use it. Maybe I'll buy one, and I'll, like, convert it and paint it up real nice or something, and then you can use it, and then it'll be, like, a friendship thing instead of a me being mean to you thing.
It'll be a friendship thing as well as a pair of shackles being put on my hands.
Did you get any other games in?
No, that's it. Although I did, the other day I got in a lift and we're driving back to my house, or he's driving, I'm just there. And we drive by Micro Center and he's like, yeah, I'd shop there, but you know, I can't keep affording all the DLC for games these days. And I was like, yeah, I know. And we're just like chatting about nerd shit. And I mentioned Warhammer and he's like, well, I'm really into Adeptus Titanicus. And I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, yeah, I don't think I've got the time or space or money to do it right now, but I really want to get into it. So we just talked about Titans and Warhammer for like half an hour. So Brandon, if you're listening, what's up?
Did you give him like negative stars for actually talking to you?
Dude, he is like the one excuse. Because usually if someone starts talking to me, I'm like, later, and I just tuck and roll out the window on the highway. And, you know, I die instantly, but it's worth it to avoid the social interaction.
You and that fucking Red Sox banner.
I love my garbage sports fandom. For once, I actually was like pleased by the interaction with a person driving a car. And I even left like a stupid review saying like, for the Emperor or some shit like that, because I'm trash.
Yeah, if I'm in a lift and the driver talks to me, that's automatic 1-star deduction. I'm the worst kind of person. Okay, well, I didn't play any games, so let's move on to new stuff. And there's not a ton this time around, but we'll go through it. Let's start with our flagship promotion, Warhammer 40k, and the kit for the Knight Preceptor came out. Canis Rex, King Dog.
I don't think there's really that much to say about this one because we've been seeing it for months and months and months, but it looks dope as hell. I want the character model from it. I think having a Preceptor would be cool. Like a Preceptor and 2 more Armigers would round out my Knights, and I could call them, not like they're not done already, but I could call them more done, overcooked,
well,
if you will.
You've got 4 Armigers, and the Preceptor, as far as I know, lets Armigers nearby reroll 1s to hit, right?
Yes, but if I have 6 Armigers, he's buffing even more of them.
Ooh. Yeah, no, I think the Preceptor would fit very well with your current House Lakar.
Yeah, I think it would, and I'd really like to I kind of would like to paint one more. And the helmet on that guy is really neat too. Like it's extra knightly and that boxy sort of look.
He's like the master of arms of a Knight House almost.
Yeah. And I'd find out some.
Oh, that's cool. Oh no, I have to resist.
Oh, I have to resist. Into this? You want to split a Renegade box?
Oh no. I would run nothing but gallants though.
Yeah, that's true. Well, shit. Well, if I do buy him, I will have a spare close combat weapon, I'm sure. So, yeah. But anyway, I'd probably get one and name it like Shining Justice or some silly ass name. And I want the character model in there just to use him for like a kill team objective or
that character. He's like he's not really like in a fighting pose. He's more in a like I'm walking to work from the subway pose. But
he's holding a briefcase and everything, right?
So Tooth and Claw came out, which was Primaris Space Wolves with that new Space Wolf character, and then Gene Stealer cults with that new Gene Stealer character. Yeah,
I think there's not a whole ton to say about this, but I want to talk about it for a minute. The Space Wolves Lieutenant, okay, cool. It's like the Blood Angel Lieutenant, the Dark Angel Lieutenant, and all that stuff. That's fine. Space Wolf Sprue, woo, good for you guys. That's neat. And the new Gene Stealer models in there, the Aberrants with especially the guy with the street sign, are fucking dope, and people have been kind of looking for them since the Overkill box went out of production. That being said, I do think the whole battle box with a new kit or 2 model that we've got going on here, it's the same thing we saw in Forge Bane, and the same thing we saw in, I think, Blight War or whatever it was for Age of Sigmar that had the Slimex and Black Talon.
Yeah.
I think that might kind of be what we'll see going forward.
So if you want to get new models, you got to get the whole fucking thing?
At least at first, because definitely all those kits are going to come out in probably a few weeks or a month or whatever as their own things. Until
Just
then,
go to eBay and buy that shit there.
You can just go onto the world's greatest garage sale and buy it there. Yes, that is true. That being said, I think
I would categorize Craigslist as more of a garage sale. eBay is more like a flea market or a swap meet. I'd
categorize Craigslist more as probable cause than anything else.
Hey, you wanna swap meat?
There was a restaurant I did go to that did an advertised $2 meat swap if you wanted to change the meat on any one of their dishes. But that being said,
good meat swap.
You could swap for chorizo if you really wanted to. But yeah, this sort of thing coming out, I think that's kind of what we're going to be seeing. Especially as armies come out later where it's like, there's not a codex coming out with it, but you want to update an old kit. What's on your mind, Dan? What else is going on?
Nothing. Okay, so
what more wisdom is spilling from your mind brain.
New releases, more of them. Rogue Trader came out, which has been really highly anticipated.
Yeah, I got to feel up the sprues. They're really nice.
There's a dog. Everybody likes that dog.
Yeah, the dog's awesome. The Voidsmen are awesome. The Rogue Trader herself is dope as hell. The medic is a little awkwardly posed, but pretty well detailed.
Okay, I think, and maybe this is just me, but I think that a lot of people are getting a little bit lost in the sauce here with Rogue Trader and not realizing that the Chaos models are really fucking good.
They are. They're just really gross, and I don't want them.
And like the dude with the giant cleaver and all the mouths in his stomach, because he's like an amalgamation of like a bunch of crew members who have now like T-1000 style like flown together to make one big giant dude. Mm-hmm. Like it's good. The models are really good. Now maybe what I'm saying is that the Rogue Trader models are that good that they're completely eclipsing the bad Gellerpox. That's right, Gellerpox infected.
More like Doge Trader, am I right?
Whoa.
Because as a dog.
That's it. That's our funniest joke of the episode.
Great. That's not dated at all.
No more jokes.
No more jokes. We're the unjoke cast now.
Jokes has left the room.
Joke is dead. I really like the one, the big, like, thrice cursed or whatever the guy is with like the fire coming out of his belly.
Vulgar or something like that? Vulgar?
Sure, whatever. Like, that model's great. Like, I honestly, again, they're all great models. They really are. And like the glitchling, like the one that's pulling off his own head, they're a bit more horrific than I think we're usually used to. And it's the closest we're kind of getting to like, quote, horror as far as Warhammer models go. Yeah, because, you know, we're used to just things being gross, but now some of these things are genuinely unsettling to look at.
I like the story behind the Gellerpox infected too, is that Nurgle found out a way to infect the thing that protects ships in warp travel. The Geller field, which, if for the uninitiated, Geller fields are they make this force field made out of real space. So like real, like nothing because it's space, but it's not the warp. And and the ships will bring that field of real space with them into the warp because the warp can't exist in it.
Yeah, it's like antimatter.
It's you know this. It's like a fucking plastic bag full of water for a goldfish on the car ride home.
Yeah, it's a bubble. That being said, the models in this kit are pretty much universally great. I was checking out the sprues earlier. They come one red sprue of all the rogue traders and one green sprue of all the Nurgle guys. One spoo. I'm not going down another mispronunciation rabbit hole here.
Listen, dude, I just want to say your enunciation this episode is on point and not terrible and mumbly whatsoever.
Oh, it's not. It's at a peak all-time low right now.
You should drink some more beer.
Please, one moment.
I know what you're gonna say, and I think I know what you're gonna say, but well, maybe not. I don't fucking know. I can't read minds, and we're in different states. The sprues for Games Workshop.
Being able to read minds is clearly like this totally possible thing is clearly limited by proximity. Are you like your typical DACA guy being like, a bolter doesn't work that way? Power armor doesn't work in the void. It's like, how would you know? Do you have a bolter? Are you psychic?
Lasguns would never miss, is all I'm saying, because they don't project any. There's no recoil.
I've seen a Star War. I've seen like 9 Star Wars at this point. I know how laser guns work. They're documentaries. Anyway. Oh, God.
It's the 40k distract episode here.
This is such a good show.
The sprues, the Games Workshop sprues have come such a long way. I saw a picture the other day of the old plastic dreadnought, the Space Marine dreadnought sprue with its like just enormous amount of wasted space in there. And then you compare that to like the new Necromunda sprues, like the Orlok sprue or the Rogue Trader sprues or the Conquest miniature thing, which we haven't even talked about. So I guess we'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to that in a second. But all right, speaking of that, I was hanging out with Dylan. He got Rogue Trader and he got a made-to-order old thing. It was like an old elf dragon. And speaking of space in the sprue, I could put my hand through parts of the sprue. And yes, I do have fairly lithe feminine hands apparently, but I could fit like up to my wrist through the plastic sprue because of how much wasted space was on it. Meanwhile, the Rogue Trader things, which are clearly like each sprue is the whole gang.
You're out there fisting sprues with Dylan. What the fuck are we talking about?
Good God. What am I doing?
Man.
So the one model in Rogue Trader that I don't care for. The point I've been belaboring for like 5 fucking minutes.
Please.
Is the assassin.
I don't like her head.
Her head's fine. It's a gun, which is cool. The thing I really don't like is her butt. There's like these big pill bug pads on her butt.
Yeah.
That look fucking ridiculous, and no other assassin has them. Like, all the assassins are wearing like the skin-tight synth suits and all that stuff, and this looks like she's just wearing extra padding in case she falls over. I don't know who put the pads there. They look terrible.
Maybe,
and I'm sure.
Hey! Maybe she's going snowboarding.
That's very true. Maybe she's going snowboarding, or she's learning how to roller skate. That being said, like,
you don't know her life.
I bet some skeezy Russian third-party model manufacturer is out there right now trying to figure out, how can I make that butt hotter?
Oh, God.
And really, that's not the problem here. The problem is just that there's these big pill bugs.
I actually don't like that model that much either. I think her head is kind of dumb, and I did not know that about the butt parts.
Look at the 360 view on the GW website. It is not a great butt.
Not a. That's the pull quote from this episode. Campbell McLaughlin, not a great butt. Okay, not your butt. Your butt's fine. Anyways,
thank you.
Let's try to move on.
Glad you noticed.
So Rogue Trader is sort of like a narrative supplement to Kill Team, whereas as far as I know, and I'm not, I don't fucking know, but it's gonna come with like custom missions and a whole new slew of rules and everything for the Gellerpox Infected and the Elucidian Star Striders.
Not Euclidean, Elucidian.
Because it's Elucia. But anyway,
you swap 2 letters. It's Star Wars rules.
So this expansion isn't really that much of like a competitive thing, I don't think. I think it's more of like a narrative storytelling device.
Yeah, I think it has more narrative missions than match play ones.
The story of Elucia Vane's ship and all the bullshit that happened to it.
I'd actually kind of like to read a book about it because it sounds like it could be really cool. Even as just like a novella.
Games Workshop. I mean, there's an idea right there. Check, please. That being said, that's not the only thing they've released for Kill Team this month. They released the Organized Play Support Kit that you can't buy, but they're sending it to stores.
Oh, I didn't even know about those.
Yeah, so it's like a tournament pack for stores for Kill Team, like with awards, with ways to match everybody up. With ideas for running the actual tournament. So and I know that somebody was telling me that like their store isn't getting it, so they're kind of like, because like their store isn't like high enough level in Games Workshop's weird draconian way of ranking their independent retailers. I think it's just kind of cool that they're sending out support, campaign or tournament support like that, like they used to back in the old days.
Well, they're big on support right now, actually. A friend of mine, this guy Josh, he's a teacher in Maine, and he's running a Warhammer club after school for some of the kids there, and they sent him a package. So he's got it's got a few novels, like the intro novels that they put out for Age of Sigmar and 40k, some of the easy to build kits, some of like the little starter magazine type things. Like it's enough to get a group kind of started into the hobby, and I think that's super cool.
It is super cool. Speaking of getting groups started into the hobby, they're doing this thing, which I don't remember if it's in the United States, but I know it's in England. Warhammer Conquest.
Yeah,
which
they are
is
the subscription thing.
Subscription for models, basically. Well, they'll give you like 3 to 5 models a month with like some paints. And you're supposed to paint your army piecemeal as it comes in, and then at the end of it, you'll have a Space Marine army or something. I think that's a really cool way to do things.
Well, I actually got to look a little bit at some like the things online for it, and week 1 is kind of like an introduction, and it has the 3-minute intercessor sprue, and then like week 2, it's like here's some Reavers and here's the rules for assault. So it kind of just pieces out the rules for you one step at a time, so you can kind of test things out. And it's like, well, this week also comes with a silver paint, so you can paint the silver on your guys from last week. Yeah, which I think is really cool. Just kind of as a, if you want to get someone into the hobby, just like here's a subscription to this thing. And I have seen a lot of people buying up stacks of the first issue of it because it was like £2 and came with 3 Marines and 3 full-size pots of paint and a little notebook. And yeah, that's stupid good value. Like, yeah, they're 3 easy build guys with the same poses, but it's still £2 for a lot of good stuff.
Somebody made a good point the other day about 40K. And maybe it wasn't 40K, but it was about like gatekeeping and hobbies in general. Like, when people were like, "Oh, I've been playing this. You're a new person. You don't deserve the fun things." Where like we need new people in the hobbies. We need young people in the hobby, or else we're just going to be a bunch of old dudes hanging out,
Yeah. No, we need people who aren't just a bunch of old grognards playing the game, whether that's reaching out to different age groups, different genders, or what have you. Like,
I think this is a really cool way to get people who aren't super, like, they don't have, the wargaming background like that we do, but they still get to like learn about playing the game and learn about painting in bits and pieces instead of like a friend and you're like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you want to play Eldar? Well, here's 40 things you should buy, and also you should learn to paint real well so we can play cool games together." Like, I think it's because it took me months to build my first army.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I kind of did it in a vacuum. Like I didn't really have I didn't have any friends. Hey, I didn't have any friends who played 40k. And so I just sort of built this my Grey Knights back in like 2007. And then I just started going to the store and being like, hey, I got Grey Knights. Anybody want a game? Like that kind of thing.
So this is a cool way for someone to learn how to play kind of on their own too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, if you don't have a community around you that's already established or at least willing to learn with you, it's really hard to learn how to get into this game.
All right. Any other 40K stuff come out? Because there's other games that I want to mention, but...
I think that's it for 40K. Right. We're kind of in a 40K light time right now.
Yeah, we're all waiting with bated breath for the fucking FAQ that's supposed to come out this month, which, we'll see, right? All right, so Blood Bowl, Nurgle's Rotters came out.
Yeah, we talked about them a bit during the podcast at Nova, just because they'd make great Nurgle cultists and all that stuff. Although, what I didn't see before today was the Nurgling eating the ball. That guy rules. That's in the running for my favorite Nurgling, and there's some good fucking Nurglings out there.
They have two special balls that they can use. There's the Nurgling eating the ball, the hungry Nurgling, and they have a ball that is like, it's covered in like blisters and is like super pussy or whatever. And its rules are that the opposing team might be too disgusted to pick it up.
Rules.
Which I think is pretty fucking hilarious. The Spike magazine for them came out too. And the Spike magazines, like I'm buying them as they come out. Like honestly, the smart thing to do, just wait until you get the whole thing in one book. But I love them. They're super funny, a lot of great humor, a lot of cool backstory, and rules for a bunch of new star players that can really bring... They don't have models yet, but they can really bring some interesting nuance and interesting new things to the game. They also came out with it was leaked, a picture of the Beast of Nurgle for the Nurgle team, which is
I didn't see that.
Very slug-like.
Nice.
And I mean, slug-like is a word that, many people have used to describe me before. So I was feeling pretty good about that.
Finally, a team I can relate to. First of all, that guy, I haven't seen that model, but I assume that guy will probably find some use in 40K and Age of Sigmar armies too.
Well, all of these Nurgle stuff, like the Blood Bowl models generally are across the board are really good. These Nurgle ones, man, they are excellent. Like the large boys, the bloaters are out there. They are gross and disgusting.
Yeah, they are. But
they also like have that Blight King. You know what I'm talking about? That kind of look to them. They're very pear shaped. Which is in this case supposed to be a good thing. They look like they would fit in real well with a 40K or AOS army.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, they'd be great for Lost in the Damned type mutants and poxwalkers and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so one more.
I was going to ask about Spike Magazine. You said there's special characters in there. Are they like redos of old star players, or are they brand new star players?
Yes to both.
Cool.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of again, there's not a whole lot of model pictures of these new ones, but there are some very interesting rules and some cool things you could do with them. Like there's a Nurgle character who has a giant mouth in his stomach. And he's really good at catching the ball because that's how he catches it. Yeah, with his giant stomach mouth.
Gross.
All right, and then finally, for Necromunda, the Van Saar weapon pack was teased, I guess, on community site. I don't think it's up for sale yet, but my notes here are who the fuck needs a multi-melta in Necromunda? Okay, Van Saar are good, right?
Finally, Van Saar have good shooting options. Finally.
So they get a fucking plasma cannon, which on a Van Saar champion is he hits on twos, and it's just like here's a you get a template, you get a template, it's
enjoy your
nuts.
injury rolls, fuckos.
And like then, not only do they give them 2 whole weapon packs, but they give them a 3rd pack of shields.
I saw the shields. I think those are already for sale.
They look cool, too. All the Van Saar shit looks amazing. Cool. But here's what I have to say, Campbell. I think that there's clear Van Saar favoritism in the Necromunda design studio.
Well, they have 3 weapon packs, right?
They have 2 weapon packs and a shield pack. Now, Escher have 3 weapon packs, and all the
Goliath
other
only
games have 2 for Orlocks and Goliath. And we don't know what Cawdor has yet. because I guess they've shown a couple of pictures of the Commodore with the weapon packs, but doesn't matter. There's fanstar favoritism, and I won't let it stand, Campbell.
This is what it feels like. This is what oppression feels like.
Damn it, I'm wrong. What it feels like. Yeah, we've never been oppressed before, so
no,
we don't know what it feels like. No, I'm joking. I think the Vansar stuff looks cool.
It does.
They are a tough game, or tough gang rather, to beat, but there are ways to do it, as you have shown with your many combat shotguns.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reminiscing about using combat shotguns. They're really good. Okay,
so let's move on out of the aspects, unless you have something else to fucking talk about.
Just want to say the new edition of the Adam Troke battle game is out.
Oh, yeah.
The Lord of the Rings got their starter set. I got to see the little swords at Nova, and they're adorable. The measuring swords.
The measuring swords.
I love the logic. It's like, well, dwarfs move like 5 inches, so the dwarf axe is 5 inches. And I was going through my whippy stick bushel the other day because I have like a bundle of them. And I'm just measuring, like, yeah, no, none of the. Well, my fiance sees one, and she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a whippy stick." She's like, "What? I don't know what that is." I'm like, "Okay,
it's for whipping."
It's a measuring stick, and if you swing it, it goes. Whew. And
if you get really mad at your brother, you can so fucking hit him with it.
No, they hurt so fucking much.
Bad.
But yeah, no, I was looking at the Lord of the Rings models the other day. I'm like, yep, those all hold up really well. I have no one to play with, and I don't need another game system, but, you know, I'm happy it's back out there.
They've done a really good job with those models. I think a lot of them are fine cast.
No, at least all the ones they just released are plastic.
I'm thinking about the character models.
Yeah, but some of the characters are still plastic too, like the Fellowship and all that stuff. But again, they're Perry Brothers sculpts. They're going to be great.
I was looking through the most recent White Dwarf on the couch at home, and Danielle was there next to me, and I saw a picture of the measuring swords, and I pointed them out to her, and I was like, "Hey, cool! Look at these measuring swords." She did not think it was that cool.
I mean, I know you're already hitched in your saddle to this one, but
yeah.
You might need to rethink things.
Second thoughts, y'all. Okay, we're moving on from our extra large, extra stupid aspects section. Wow, this we've been going a long time already on this.
Yeah, we have
this clearly awful episode. And
you're sorry or you're welcome.
We're gonna go on.
Take your pick.
Onto making the call in the We Make the Call segment, where we've got a couple of good questions from our friends on something awful. So the first one is from Artum or Artum. Mm-hmm. And they say, what should you do if the local scene is too competitive for your tastes?
Okay. I would honestly say ask around with people who are there and just be like, hey, you know, like talk to them before games or out of a gaming context. So if you have a group Facebook or whatever, or, you know, you meet on some forum or what have you, just put out some feelers, be like, hey, I don't like to play this hard. Who would be willing to play a softer game? Because if you try to keep up with them to play as hard as they do, you might find out that you thrive in that environment, and turns out you're a cutthroat competitive player and you didn't even know it.
Just like you.
Yeah, exactly. You just bring knights, you'll be great. That's my real advice, just bring knights. But alternatively, you'll try to play as well as them and you'll just get thoroughly thrashed and you'll hate it and you might even quit the game. So I would put out feelers and just be like, hey, you seem cool. Would you be willing to play a chiller game that isn't quite as hardcore, and maybe even if you have the means to play at your house or something like that, or somewhere where you can foster a less competitive, more casual environment, just throw it out there.
That is really good advice. And I want to kind of echo it with doing what I do. And my closer friends that play 40K are all super competitive, like Mike Brandt. And playing with Mike, he's good because he's a friend of mine, but playing against him in games is just sort of, it can get pretty eye rolly after a while. So do what I do. You can focus on hobbying and attend events that you know are more your speed, like Nova Open, the narrative event, or the Friendly at Adepticon. And then occasionally get games with people that you know are chill.
Yeah.
So I mean, the vast majority of time I spend with 40K is painting.
Oh, yeah. So. The time spent painting to playing is kind of absurd in our case, but you want to make sure you're having fun during that time you are playing.
Well, my favorite thing about having nicely painted armies is then when I go and get my ass kicked by someone who's more competitive and better at 40K, then I can be like, well, at least my army looks better.
Yeah, except when I get fucking dumpstered by a guy whose army's all primer gray or whatever, I get a little sad.
I don't get sad anymore. That's a lie. I get sad all the time. Okay, so we had another question that I liked. Oh, also, I just want to thank you for not saying "get good" to as an answer to the first question.
GITGUD, 2 words that aren't words. Yeah. Oh, sorry, jud. Come at me.
Episode 1 callbacks. Fuck yeah. Continuity, fuckers. Next question was from our super talented writer and friend of the show, Rob. What to do if someone in your group gets all mopey and won't play because they've lost a few games and think their army is, quote, shit this edition, so why bother, unquote. That's a good one.
Okay, yeah, because I've had this problem before, and I've met some people who are just so fucking in that and they can't get over. Like, I had a friend in high school who I beat him in a game we played with his Eldar versus my Marines. Famously underpowered Eldar versus famously overpowered Space Marines. And to this day, he has not played in like 15 years, and he still thinks Space Marines are overpowered. And he hasn't even whatever.
Oh, buddy, I got news for you.
The moment we finished our game, he went over to the computer, started playing Dawn of War against my chapter of Space Marines, set the difficulty to very easy and beat them, and then left my house.
He sounds like a cool guy.
Incredibly cool guy. Anywhom, all right.
Anywhomst.
The very easy thing is to just throw them a game, but throwing the game isn't satisfying for anybody.
No, nobody wants that.
I would instead, if you were playing them one-on-one, if you're trying to set up a game for it, I would just take a soft, like, you could take a soft list and play it to your absolute best if you wanted to. Like, you could take a list with suboptimal units and still try to play the best game you can. So you're not necessarily throwing the game, but you're also not bringing your A game. You're bringing like your C or D game, depending on how they are. That being said, if they're like really pissy about it and they're having a bad time with the game altogether, and let's just say you still thrash them with your shitty army list, try to find ways to focus their game in other ways. Like, maybe their army sucks in 40k, but is pretty good in Kill Team. Or maybe they can take this time to get better at painting and better at modeling and stuff like that, and shift their focus from gaming to hobbying. Or you could even just be like, hey, why don't we this is a wild one, let's switch armies for a game.
I was just about to suggest that.
I'll play your index orcs and you can play my knights or whatever and see what happens. And just, they'll either get a power rush of playing your army, get fucking crushed into the dirt and still lose and quit the hobby altogether, which is pretty unlikely, or they'll kind of they might get some perspective. As for them being like pissy all the time, like really the best thing you can do is just be like, just try to foster that environment where they don't take things so seriously. And I know that is not always easy. Some people take this game incredibly seriously, or they don't take it seriously, but they take it hard and they lose. And that's just how it goes. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to throw your arm around the shoulder and say, hey man, I get it. Things are hard.
Yeah.
But and we can work through this. And then you can coach and list build and switch armies or go get some beers or whatever.
If they need some coaching, that's good. Actually, a guy I used to play with all the time when I was a kid, and kind of where I feel like I've gotten some of my ethos from is he'd be losing a game and he'd be getting thrashed, and he wouldn't break a stride. He'd just be like, beats working.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like beats fucking around with my kids or, whatever else. Like one thing that I like to do whenever I'm playing a one-sided game is I try to like talk up the social aspect of the hobby and like keep it very light, keep it very friendly, and then focus on the little wins. Whether I'm getting my ass kicked or I'm kicking the other guy's ass, and like the other guy, if I'm beating him and he kills my warlord or something, that's like, hey, like focus on that and make sure that every success that person is having, even though maybe they're not having the best game, is noted and talked about. And a lot of times I think that makes people feel better.
Yeah, like we did a podcast episode a long time ago. Like it might even be like episode 5. It's called a low sodium alternative to a good podcast. Yeah. Where we talked about like avoiding salt in the hobby. So you can look that up. I can't find the number right now, but
yeah, 40kbadcast.com if you want to do that. And then make sure you tweet at Campbell at BrotherSRM the episode number and title and tell him that he's an idiot. And I will retweet that and like it and
do the same at me. No, please at me. Everyone, please at me.
At the shit out of this guy. All right, let's move on. Those are really good questions, guys. Always, please always be asking questions to us. Contact at 40kbadcast.com. We need content for the stellar and fan favorite We Make the Call segment. So
the one question I do wish we got to answer was, how does Marnius Calgar type with power gloves on?
Well, I answered that in our chat earlier. It's he has serfs and servants to do it for him.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's
I would
not
say
funny.
very carefully.
It's not funny, Campbell. There's nothing we can do with this joke.
That's fair.
It's not funny. Does he have a giant, like 8 foot tall phone so he can send texts on? No, he doesn't. Nobody does. That's stupid.
It's a phablet for him, actually.
You're off the podcast.
I quit.
Okay. We're moving on. I want to talk a little bit, very quickly, about something that I'm very excited about, and it's Gang War 4. Gang War 4 came out like what feels like 9 months ago, and we were supposed to talk about it in our episode right before Nova, but I forgot. So I just want to talk about why I'm excited about it. They introduced a lot of things, new brutes, new gang, the Caldor gang, but most importantly, they introduced the Dominion campaign. And the Dominion campaign is a really cool way to play Necromunda. It starts with terrain cards that are dealt at random to the player group with a certain number based on the number of players playing in the campaign. And then the game is directly about taking over these terrain. First, by fighting over it, nobody has it, and they're going out and getting it in the first round of the campaign. And then after, you are directly challenging and attacking other gangs for the terrain that you would like to acquire. And reading this, it just made so much fucking sense on how to run a campaign. It breaks it down into super easy to parse little bits for an arbitrator and the players. And it just makes so much sense and seems like a ton of fun. So when we do Synchro to Necro this upcoming year in 2019,
this upcoming Synchro,
we're gonna do the Dominion campaign format because it just makes it easy, and it's fun because you get the challenge aspect. Like I can call out Dylan and his terrible Van Sar and say, "Hey, we're gonna play a game." I can call you, or you probably want to call me out in a game where I can't run away and then win. But it seems like such an intuitive and fun way to play the game. And I'm really, really excited about it. And if you are interested, you can go and pick up Gang War 4. It's a good book. A lot of people have been complaining about the way that Necromunda has been rolled out, piecemeal. And yeah, I get that. But, when you put it all together, it's still a very, very good game. So pick it up. Check it out. Gang War 4, Dominion campaign. Super fun.
There's also a guy in there who's basically Master Blaster, and that's cool.
Anything that has anything to do with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the best 3/4 of a movie ever made. If you like
2/3, please.
You get like halfway, right? When he's exiled, that's awesome. Like everything to the exiling point is awesome. And then when they come back for that rockin' fucking chase scene at the end.
That's true.
Right? Just the whole him meeting the kids and then going back to Bartertown, that all sucks. That's bullshit. But God, come on, that chase scene at the end with the fucking train. And,
I was thinking contiguous 2/3.
Did you know this? You may have. But that dude with the little standard on his back with the kabuki mask.
Yeah.
So he's not only is he in the movie, but he's the stunt coordinator for the entire movie. You know what his fucking name is?
What?
Angry Anderson.
Fuck.
Yeah, he's like an Australian stunt coordinator extraordinaire. I don't even know if he's still fucking around or whatever, but that movie is the best 3/4 of a movie ever made.
Well, I hope you all enjoy this sojourn over to Dan's Film Corner. Let's go watch Beyond Thunderdome after this.
I fucking would love to. I love that fucking film. Anyways, though spoiler alert, when Blaster bites it, man, that gets me every time. It's just sad.
It's worse than Old Yeller dying.
It's bad. It's a rough one. Not even a joke. It's just a rough bit. I still love that movie, but man, when they get him, it always makes me feel a little shitty. Anyways, on that high note, let's move on to a conversation that we wanted to have about leveling up your hobby. We have recently both either taken classes or tried out new things with the hobby, and we wanted to talk about our experiences trying those out and what we can do moving forward and maybe what you can do moving forward in your hobby as well. So, Campbell, recently you painted your Belladonna miniature from Necromunda, and I want you to talk and describe a little bit about how you did that.
So this was my first time using a wet palette. I have been a from the pot garbage painter for like 20 years. Maybe not garbage painter, but garbage technique as far as that goes. But just like I had the consistency down right where I knew like how much water could be in my brush, and then I put it in the paint pot and I could get that right. But I only had so much brush control. I only had so much consistency, and I couldn't mix colors almost at all. I have an upturned like 40 millimeter base with just a dozen colors just blobbed in there that I've used from either Vallejo paints or mixing my own paints or what have you. And this was my first time actually getting to use a wet palette. I've always been kind of intimidated by it because it's always like one more step I have to add to things. But after Nova, I was just kind of feeling like I may not peaked as a painter, but I'd kind of reached a plateau.
Well, let's pause for 1 second and describe what a wet palette is.
It is a layer of a spongy foam. In this case, this is like an old P3 wet palette I got as a hand-me-down from Dylan, which he got it as a hand-me-down from Cody. So this is like, I'm the bronze medal of this palette holders.
You're the fucking third son.
Yeah, no, I at least not the middle child. So anyway, it's like a plastic box, plastic tray, I guess, really. And it has the sponge layer that you pour water in, you put the sponge layer on top. Then you lay a piece of basically parchment paper, and it closes so it can seal the moisture in. And what you do is you like take paint out of a pot, whether with your brush or squirting it out, mix it around there and put in a little water, and you're able to get really good brush control. You're able to get very good mixing opportunities, and you're able to maintain the consistency and point of what you're painting.
So the great thing about the wet palette, and the wet palettes that I've used, you don't really need a crazy spongy material. I just used wet paper towels. The parchment paper you put on top of it, and parchment paper, of course, is what a lot of people use with baking because it's got a non-stick surface. But what it is it's semi-permeable. So the paint, instead of drying out on the wet palette, will draw up water through the parchment paper to replenish itself so it stays wet, and hence the idea of the wet palette. So with the wet palette, you can use blending techniques and mixing techniques a lot more effectively than what you can do with a dry palette.
Yes, a dry palette, which would be something like a paper towel or even the surface of your painting table, or in some people's cases, like the back of their thumbnail. I'm not into that whole thing.
Well, well, when I was using a wet palette in the Roman Lepat class, like I used my left hand because I'm right-handed. Like I would gather the paint on my brush from the wet palette, and then to figure out how much paint I needed on my brush, I would brush it off onto my hand. Because on the wet palette, you can't. I maybe you could, but I could never really get the correct amount of paint on my brush that I could with a dry palette. Because a dry palette, you're wiping off paint onto the palette to get the correct amount for what you're going to paint. But with a wet palette, you're more gathering and mixing and stuff, and then you got to transfer over to something dry to put the right amount of paint on your brush on.
Yeah. I kind of figured it out around halfway through painting this miniature because, again, I was intimidated by it, but I've also been a painter who's worked a lot by feel, like not necessarily by a technique I know, but just kind of by knowing that, like, okay, this feels like this when I brush it across something, I know how consistent this is going to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, pretty much every stage of my painting career, from the old days where I was just painting one thick coat over black primer on my Marines to when I was just dry brushing, exclusively dry brushing, to when I started highlighting, to when I started weathering and so on, I've always, I reach a point where I'm like, I feel like I've done all I can do at this level and I want to move on. I feel like I've peaked. I need to do something different. I need to get a new tool in my toolbox. Whether that has been edge highlighting, washes, which were an amazing stepping stone.
Oh yeah, washes are fantastic.
But I found when I did this Belladonna model, I barely used washes at all because I was just wet blending or blending, really. I wasn't doing two brush blending or anything like that. I was just mixing custom colors, mixing and just progressively mixing a lighter color until I got these lovely blends on almost every surface of the model.
It looks really good.
Thank you. I'll post pictures soon. I haven't taken good photos yet, but I decided to just go out of my comfort zone in every way I could because, again, this model has so many different textures and materials and so on that you could kind of just go nuts. So with she has these feathers on this headdress. I'm like, you know what? I'd love to do some teals. I never paint teal. I've never painted turquoise. So I'm a turquoise to yellow gradient across that. And her body armor, I'm like, you know what would be cool here? Purple, because I don't have anything purple really aside from, the odd Psyker's coat or whatever. So I got to do this, this great purple gradient, on her armor. And I mixed up the colors for her skin. I even applied makeup to her, which, You know what? Yeah, my fiance is pretty good at applying her makeup, but I think I might be better if the surface area is this small.
I'm fucking telling her.
She will be upset. But yeah, no, I even I got to paint this kind of like synthwave color palette too, which is a lot of fun. And I even moved on when I did the base. You know, I did this basing pretty much the same way as I did my Goliaths, where it's like, you know, some metallics, some like really watered down browns to be kind of like a runoff color in the recesses. So not necessarily a wash. It's like a wash, but not quite. But then I also got to use weathering powders on there too. And these are something I also got to play with on the armored containers I painted recently. And it is so easy to just make things look like sooty and dirty and grimy just by getting a dry brush and just stabbing it on there. And actually, like, it tints the area, because while the powder itself will wear off with use unless you varnish it, which I varnished it because I don't want to deal with that, it still stains the surface underneath. And using these new tools, I'm not going to do it for every single model I do. Like, I'm not going to do these like 18 stage wet blends for every single Space Marine's power armor. That's insane. But the techniques I've picked up here, I can simplify a bit, or, you know, not go quite as far with for anything I do from here out. And I feel like my third eye has opened here. Like,
nice.
Just, like, as I'm painting this one model, I'm just like, holy shit, I can do this. This rules. And if you are feeling at all intimidated by moving on to a new tool set or trying a new tool, like, let's just say wet palette, I've been resisting this thing for years. Like, I honestly have. I've had it suggested to me by Dylan, especially, for actual years, and been like, no, I'm good. But it took me just kind of feeling like I had reached a plateau to try it. And if you're ever feeling that way, please try whatever you can, because at the end of the day, these are just models. And if you fuck up, it's a model. Who cares? It's a piece of plastic. You're not going to die. You know, like, I know they're GW models, so they're not the cheapest ones out there, but you can still test other models if you want to. This is so, it's great.
Okay, so wet palette is really just like one piece of the pie, or one arrow in the quiver for leveling up your hobby. And I want to talk about some of the things that I learned at this class, and it's art principles and art history principles, which, like, weirdly enough, like, apply, maybe not weirdly enough, but they certainly apply to miniature painting. Art. So one of the things that I was super excited to learn about was contrast and how to use contrast in, like, many different ways on the model itself. And the first one is light dark contrast. So I don't know if you did this with your Belladonna, but if you talk about, like, zenithal contrast, so like the sun is shining down on a model, and so your lightest colors are going to be near the top of the model where the light is hitting. Did you do any of that stuff?
I did that on everything.
Okay, great.
Every surface.
Yeah. So, like, that is with the wet palette especially, that is a great way to start painting your model, is to use, like, you start with a base color, right? And you paint the area that you're going to paint that color, your base color. And then the stuff that's in the light, you can add some white to that color on your wet palette and make it lighter. And the stuff that's in the shadows, you can add some black to that color and make it darker. And then you've got a great little color gradient, the start of a color gradient at least, on your miniature to show the light-dark contrast. But that's not the only type of contrast there is, Campbell. There's color contrast, too.
Yeah, there's complementary colors.
So there's the color wheel. If you Google color wheel, you'll find one. And these are the colors that stand out the most from one another, like blue and orange, or green and red, or purple and yellow, which can make striking color contrast in your models. Like, you know those Tyranids that, like, everybody and their mom has Tyranids with purple skin and bone
the
carapace.
Leviathan scheme. Yeah.
Which is, backwards rather, purple carapace and bone chitin skin, whatever, doesn't matter. Like, that's a great color combination, because you've got that light-dark color combination with dark purple and bone, and then you've got that sort of contrasting color thing where bone isn't really a yellow, but it's not a white either.
Yeah, it's yellow adjacent.
Yeah. So, like, and those Leviathan colors look great on Tyranids. I did in my Necromunda set the Beast Slayer. You know, that little tentacle coming out of the sewer grate?
Yeah.
I did that with purple skin and bone spurs on it, and it looks fantastic. You've got a ton of range of different things you could do. Like, when I did my Demonette model for the class, She's like purple and bluish for the most part, but then around her is like this green and orange and yellow on her base to make her stand out a whole lot from her base. There's also saturation and desaturation contrast. So like a saturated color is, that bright, vibrant color. Well, like a desaturated color is, more pulled back. You add gray or white to the color to get to tone the color down a little bit. But
I mean, that's what I did with Belladonna. Like her clothes, what there are of them are this desaturated brown, this like brown to khaki is pretty much the entire thing. And all her armor is the bright purples and greens and all that.
So there's like many different types of contrast going on in that you can use in art, right? And so you can use these principles in your miniatures. And I found, like, when I was painting my Primaris Librarian that I was painting recently, like I was using a lot of these principles so librarians come with blue armor. That's like the color so I did Cantor blue and I worked up to, I think I worked up to Baharth blue and even white in some areas. And then like I was like, I want to do a sword. So what goes against blue? Orange. So I'm like, I'll do a majority red and orange sword with a little bit of stuff going up to yellow in parts.
Yeah.
Because the deepest parts of the armor I was shading with Druchii Violet, which is that purple shade that they make. So the deepest parts of the armor are purple, deep blue purple. And then the lightest parts of the sword and the OSL I did on his outstretched hand are yellow. And so you get these cascading different types of or not saturation, but contrast in the model. And then I didn't really do saturation contrast in that one. It's all pretty bright colors all over the place, but it's fucking Space Marines. So
yeah, that's okay.
I'm feeling okay with it. But it was so cool to use all these things that I had learned in this class painting this model. Now, I didn't do a wet palette with this one because, honestly, I didn't feel like it. But I'm going to be doing wet palettes when I start doing these Blood Bowl star players that I have lined up.
Yeah. And here's the thing also, if you're using wet palette, you don't have to custom blend every single color like I was doing for my character. You can just do it straight out of the pot, put it on there, and just use it for color consistency and all that. Because all the like Warhammer painting tip of the day things with, Duncan and Peachy and all that stuff is just them taking a color out and putting on a palette. They're not mixing custom colors. They're just doing that for consistency. Yeah. And like when I did that, I even got control over washes. Like I wasn't flooding whole areas anymore. I was able to do like a really comfortable pin wash. It was fantastic. That being said, when it comes to shading, like the first thing everyone thinks is like, oh, shadows are black, I'll wash it black. And that's not necessarily the case because true black doesn't exist. Like that isn't realistic. If you're shading a color that's really dark already, like a gray, yeah, it makes sense. But you shaded down to purple. If I was doing a red, I would shade down to a brown or in some cases a green because you can get a really nice contrast by doing a green wash or a green recess, shading on a red. And an actual straight black is not going to look natural all the time. Honestly, it'll look fine for a lot of stuff. Like metallics looks great. For blues, that actually even looks pretty good depending on how dark the blue is. But for a lighter color especially, you're going to want to cut that and get something that looks a little better. Because like with yellows, I love doing oranges or browns to shade them. A straight black will just look kind of oily and gross.
Yeah.
But
so metals, let's talk about metals for a moment.
All right.
A really cool thing you can do with metals is you take the idea of zenithal highlighting and you dial it up to 11. So you've got your metal, your base like lead belcher color, right? And you're looking at an armor plate on a miniature and it's sort of angled and there's a face that goes up and a face that faces down. So right there you've got your clear what should be light, what should be dark. Because we're using the whole zenithal idea. So light coming from top. Zenith is what it means. Zenith. So your top plate is going to be, you're going to base them, right? You're going to use a lead belcher to base both of them. Then at the bottom one, you can hit that with some Nuln Oil, maybe even a couple coats of it to nice darken it up. Or you can mix lead belcher and black on your wet palette. And then you can take some Runefang or Stormhost or whatever. It's you can't really mix like white with metallics, doesn't really work.
Metallic's a little funky,
but black with metallics does work.
Okay.
And then you can take your like lighter metals and hit the stuff on top, but right under it is you got that dark part. And the trick to highlighting metal is you have the light next to the dark. Not like a big gradient like you can do on skin or like a colored armor plate, but right next to the light is a little bit of dark to pop that contrast a little more. If you look at a lot of the swords that they do for Games Workshop, you know how they have that sort of checker pattern on them?
Checker pattern?
So it'll be like they'll take the sword and it'll have a ridge running up the middle.
Yes, yes.
Then they'll have a light section and then dark section, and then it's inverted on the other side.
Yes,
that's basically what I'm talking about. And it really helps the metallic part of the miniature pop when you've got the light right next to the dark like that.
Yeah, it also looks dope as hell.
So you don't really just go and edge highlight everything. You don't have to. You can, but you don't have to. But if you focus on that contrast between what's light and what's dark, and the way you figure that out is you just look at the model. You get that first base coat down of your metallic color, and you just look at it and you say, where is the light hitting? And that's where I'm painting the lighter parts, and I'm going to recess the parts that are near that to help them pop a little bit more.
And again, if you feel like you might have fucked up by doing that, you just paint over it.
Yeah. So
it's not that big a deal.
So Campbell, there's one thing we didn't mention about in leveling up the hobby.
Okay.
Airbrushes.
Because I don't know anything about them.
Neither do I. And I think that's got to be the next step, man.
That's probably going to be the next step. So I've mentioned before, I have a fuckload of Primaris Marines. They're just like the Dark Imperium set, like a few of those and other stuff. And I've been figuring out what to do with them. I've hemmed and hawed, going Blood Ravens, Black Templars, maybe Imperial Fist, back to Blood Ravens, maybe. And I think I'm going to be trying to use an airbrush on them. And I don't want to do the full, just doing like the Xenolithal Prime and then the base coat, and then I will work from there with brush paints, doing, edge highlights and all that stuff is what I want to do. And I want to combine those techniques instead of just relying on one singular technique. Because again, these are all tools in a toolbox and they're not applicable for every single job. Like there's no one size fits all tool here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try to look into taking a class with airbrushes because I'm very curious. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have a good setup for it, but I'm sure I could fake it till I make it with that. But that's definitely a place that I want to get into for leveling up my hobby because I've never tried it before. I've only ever painted terrain with an airbrush and not like expertly, just sort of, it was Nova terrain, like GT terrain. So, I'm not a fucking Picasso over here. So,
well, that's the thing.
Pablo Picasso, known for his airbrush work.
No, actually, little known, Pablo Picasso actually played War Machine and never painted any of his models.
That's funny.
But yeah, Papusa Poblano never played Warhammer. He only played War Machine. That being said, taking classes is honestly a thing I wish I had more opportunity to do because finding ways to present new knowledge that aren't just a tutorial online or a video or even a friend. I have friends, all right, but that's how I learned how to wet palette.
Friends are okay.
Friends are fine. I could take them or leave them. Tutorials and videos are one thing, but if you can actually get some sort of instruction in person, whether that is a formal class or a friend who actually knows what they're talking about, that can help you out immensely.
Great point, Campbell.
And again, like, you have so many techniques out there and every technique can be pushed at least another step further. Because like my first Space Marines that I was doing highlighting on, I had one step of highlights and that's it. Mm-hmm. And you have proven to the world just how much edging one man can take as you do 3 highlights per guy?
3 highlights with black for each guy. There's a couple other colors that get that much work too on them. It's a lot of edging. All right. It's a lot.
It is. But
I'm capable of sustaining a lot of edging is what you
edging for insane amounts of time.
We had a suggestion at Nova for a new shirt. It just says edging enthusiast on it.
I, of course, started over designing it with my mouth right then and there. No, just put the words on it.
Just put the fucking words. We need to make that shirt because I'd buy one.
Edging enthusiast is the next shirt to come out. shop.spreadshirt.com/40k Badcast, I think is the URL. But yeah, that'll be coming out eventually because now we've set it on there and that's legally binding.
Okay, let's move on. We've got a segment that I know you want to talk about, and I might be contrarian to this one for once on our show. We're calling it When to Let Go. And I want you to introduce us to this segment real quick.
Okay. So there comes a time in every ham's life or they've come to the conclusion that they're just not using all their stuff. And maybe that is a project that you started but never got off the ground. Maybe it's just a few boxes still in shrink, books for a game you never played, or an old army or old models you just don't use anymore. And it's one of the reasons I'm kind of suspect of any time a friend of mine's like, oh, you should try Dust, or, name a game here, because by the time, I get around to playing it, they might not want to play anymore. And then I'll just have these models and nothing to do with it. But like, this is me trying to figure out, at what point should you get rid of something? Like, at what point should you let something go? Whether it is selling it on eBay, giving it to a friend, or what have you.
So are you thinking about getting rid of anything?
At the moment, yes. I know. So I have a guard army that I painted in college, and I have not used them since 2012. They're Acadian and Catachan mixed regiment force. They're painted decently well, but there's nothing that special about them. And when I started my Valhallan army in 2012, I never went back to them. And I honestly don't think I'll ever go back to them. Like, unless I have a friend come over and they're like, I want to play with your guard. And I'm like, okay, I'll play with my other guard because we're both in the mood to play guard today. Unless that specific impossible scenario happens, I'm not going to be using these guys. So right now they are just taking up closet space, and I don't really have a use for them. I mean, I have, some stuff from high school I painted too, like some old Marines that I haven't used since like 2008 or 2009, but they're not really worth anything. So should I just let them go? Should I strip and reuse them? Should I just, the nice answer would be find a kid who wants to get into the game and give them your old models or whatever. But I don't want to prowl around game stores looking for children who want toys, because this is a great way to get the police called on me.
That seems somewhat hyperbolic, but, whatever. I have a contrary opinion.
Okay.
But I got to couch it first. So, like, books and rule sets and stuff that you don't use, like, fucking get rid of that shit. It's words, and words are wind. Just like I was saying earlier today, like, words, they're hard. Sometimes they're hurtful, and I don't trust them.
Words can only do harm, Dan.
So I try to get rid of them as much as I can. So old books and stuff, yeah, get rid of those. I keep a lot of the old codexes around just because I like the fluff and I like to read about it sometimes. But
yeah, like, I've never wanted to get rid of my old codexes or white dwarfs, which is essentially hoarding at this point, but I love them. They're cool to go
When it came to like the War Mahords books we got at Adepticon in 2017, oh my God. I got fucking rid of those things.
I was like, how many starter sets from cons for games we'll never play have we gotten rid of between us?
But like, I haven't played my Grey Knights that I finished in 2008. I think I played them once in 8th edition against like a friend's demon army. Yeah. And I lost real bad. And I have like, it's like 1,300 points. It used to be 2,000 points, but now it's like 1,300 points worth of stuff. I'm not going to get rid of it. I think the time to when to let go when it comes to models is never.
Okay.
Like, if I'm playing a game, if I've got a game against a friend who's got a demon army, I'll bring my Grey Knights. Well, I'll bring a few squads of Grey Knights, and we'll have a nice little narrative game, like my Armageddon Steel Legion and Grey Knights against somebody's demons. Like, that sounds like a ton of fun. My old Raven Guard, who look like shit compared to my current Raven Guard, I'm not going to get rid of them. It might be fun to have a squad of Stern Guard or some tactical Marines, or like someone's like, hey man, I want to try out this thing. I've got 4,000 points worth of shit, and I want to beat up on your Raven Guard. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to have to use old shitty models, and they're going to be like, cool, whatever. Like, all that stuff is there. It's still usable. It's still fun. And maybe you are not going to find you're not going to be able to use them like all the goddamn time. I haven't touched my Guard in a while. I've only played with my Raven, but I'm not going to get rid of my Steel Legion. And that project isn't even over yet.
But say that also isn't that old an army. I'm talking about stuff from like 10 years ago, more even.
I think that getting rid of armies, especially playable armies, unless you absolutely have to, like you need the money, or it's going to save your relationship with your significant other or whatever, I think it's folly, man. Hold on to these things. There's still a lot of fun that can be had in there.
See, I also have this, I have two modes of thought here. One is my dad has had this mantra, what have you, of never sell anything you've painted. And he never has. He's also been painting since the 70s. The problem is only got rid of his thousands of VHS tapes out of necessity like 4 years ago. So that kind of, there's an ingrained fear there for me.
Your dad sounds like a hoarder.
That's a hoarding situation, and I try to be conscious of that because I have filled very small spaces with a lot of garbage in my time. But that being said, I've only truly sold one painted army as far as I can recall, which were my old orc army I painted in college. I built them as cheap as possible. I speed painted them as quickly as possible, and pretty quickly I found they weren't up to my standards. And when I wanted to do orcs, I bought a new orc army and I did my blood axes, which you got to play with when we played in my old apartment. Yeah. And that 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 old orc army was sitting in a closet for years, I sold it to actually I think a goon on something awful.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure. And they looked fine, but I was never going to field them along with my new ones because I wanted them to look this good. Because I have this thing where I have a hard time fielding an army that doesn't meet my visual standards, like that doesn't look as good as I want an army to play, or look as good as they play. There we go.
That's a good point. I'm there too. And before I play another game with my Steel Legion, I'm going to have to go in and fix all the chips that are all over them right now because they're all metal. But I'm also just realizing right now how much of a hypocrite I am because like in everything else in my life, my mantra is when in doubt, throw it out. Mm-hmm. Like at work here, like if we have any old recording equipment or cameras or something, I'm always telling my boss, I'm like, let's get rid of it. It's taking up space. At home, like my clothes, if like a tiny hole appears in a sock, it's gone. Like it's done. If like a glass is chipped, it's gone.
Well, like if there's something to be said, there's also something to be said for sentimentality. Pretend I said that as a cogent sentence.
No, you're going to have to try again there, fella, because I didn't understand that.
Okay. There's something to be said for sentimentality as well. Because I still have my Screaming for Vengeance shirt I bought in 7th grade because I fucking love that shirt. It doesn't fit me right anymore, but I love it. It's sentimental. It's a good PJ shirt. But like the old captain to my Ultramarines army, I think his name was Captain Octavius because everyone's Ultramarines captain is named Captain Octavius at some point, and he was just a dude with a chainsword and a stormbolter. And when I moved, I've dug him out of a box and his gun had broken off, and I turned him into a piece of terrain. I made a statue of him. I painted over him in bronze and like added verdigris and dirt and all this stuff. And I made this cool little statue memorializing my old Ultramarines from when I was a kid. And I used that as a piece of terrain or as an objective in like every game I play in a city.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
No, don't you forget about him.
Don't you forget about Captain Octavius. Stormbolter and chainsword, don't you? Okay.
So that being said, is there anything have you ever like started a project and just before even getting it off the ground, just gone, nah, and gotten rid of it? Because I've had that happen like 4 times.
Nah, I complete projects, dude.
Okay. Because like I bought like a Tyranid army. It was like, 500 points. It's like a starter force. And I had it and I opened the box and I was like, I'm never going to fucking paint this. And I just sold it immediately. I did the same thing with Flesh Terrors. I had a very dark time in my life where I did the same thing with Tau.
No, you know what? I did start something and then sell it off because you fucking convinced me to. It was fucking 30K. I bought the Calth box and never did anything with it. And I didn't even sell it. I just gave it away.
I'm sorry. You just couldn't perceive how perfect that game was.
Oh, I was so wrong.
You were wrong.
Oh, I was so wrong. But you know who else is wrong? You. Never throw anything out, kids. Just don't do it.
Keep everything.
No, you've made some good points. And like nobody should be a hobby hoarder. But I don't know, man. Like my stuff is still playable. It's still good.
Yeah. I'm
not gonna get rid of it.
And don't forget, a ham can't die until they've painted all their models.
Oh, that's not true. But I hope it's true. Fuck.
I hope it's true. My dad's still painting stuff he bought in his honeymoon in the 70s.
Oh, may he live forever. Okay. Let's get on to it. Let's get on to the reason why people listen to the show, Fact or Fan Fiction. Do you have something for me this week, my dude?
Unfortunately, I do.
Please, sock it to me.
I enter the living room, where a circle is visible on the floor, surrounded by floating robots which hover on the spot. My grandmother stands and looks at me, with her blade out and ready for battle. Once entering the circle, a buzzer was sounded as a countdown began, till, 2 L's, the start of the match. Our faces are still revealing no emotion until finally the counter says 0, and we're off! at lightning speed is, we clash back and forth multiple times, all the while being silent as a calm wind with our body movements and our blades dampening any sounds when they clash. My grand-mother's moves are agile and calculated, and are in a way that she can hit me multiple times through one body movement. My style is more up-close and brutal, with vast amounts of weight behind my blows, as I try to do as much damage as possible, and try to not allow my opponent to recover for a time.
Take a breath.
The battle continues on this way for a while before my grand-mother's hands start to flare and distort as she begins to utilize the warp against me, pushing me back to the edge of the ring while I block her blasts with my blade. She will have my cornered and defeated soon. Thankfully, through multiple combat lessons with her, I've come up with ways to get an edge around her through more brutal means. Once I charged at her with Bi-Blade in front to block attacks. Another time I threw Bi-Blade at her. This time I got a hold of the robot at the edge of the circle, and with my might fling it towards her. I go in while the machine flies towards her and prepare for a strike.
But they're using the warp.
She effortlessly cuts the robot coming towards her in half by swing to the side. And as I charge toward her, my slams her elbow into my back, sending me toward the ground with a thud. You're not the only one who can fight like a monkey. You're getting likable in your old age. What happened to the work harder mentality you used to have every time I lost? I say as I groan from the pain now in my chest despite my armor.
This is dumb.
My exact word were to work harder, and you have. Yay me! You've made it clear that you won't be practicing with anything related to the war.
I like the
so
voices,
continue to work on blocking my attacks with a blade. I'll also get you some specially made armor for the future, which will help you.
What is happening?
Thanks. How is your search gone across the galaxy gone?
Oh, segue. Cool.
Good. I found some nice planets.
Is that it?
Oh, there's plenty more. I can go though.
No, we're good. That's like a conversation between me and my parents. How's your search of the galaxy going? Oh, it's good. Found some nice planets.
As she's sword fighting, she is sword fighting with Grandmama.
What the fuck? Who wrote that?
That was, well, let's see. First of all, guess if it's fact or fan fiction first.
Oh, it's fan fiction, Campbell. That's garbage.
Believe it or not, this is not Ben Counter's latest book. This is Between Eldari and lowercase humans by Anonir Samuel, and this is chapter 14.
Oh, man. Did you read the 13 previous chapters?
No, nor did I read the 49 following chapters. I found it and I read like the first paragraph of one and I'm like, this looks like garbage. And I just skipped to a random chapter and yeah.
And guess what it is?
Author's notes. Thanks for all the ideas on extending the protagonist is lifespan, guys. It is helpful as there are a lot of options to go with, ranging from bio-tech to full-on robot form. Keep them coming with their they're great. I do not own Warhammer 40k.
Do you ever feel bad? Like not like generally, because of course you do.
Always,
but like
ceaselessly.
Does factor fan fiction like make you feel bad sometimes?
Yeah, God. You know, honestly, since I read factor fan fiction, I'm like, okay, I get it. This person has some very, very particular fetishes and they're exposing it in a safe space where they can't hurt anybody with their weird Eldar foot tickling fan fiction. Because I chose not to read that one. I took that bullet for you, Dan. Because there's some steps I will not go over.
Oh, I'm disappointed. Maybe I'm not. I did cancel a fan fiction reading when it got a little too spicy that one time.
Yeah, no, this one is equal parts spicy and salty, and I did not care for it.
All right, well, that was garbage, Campbell, which this episode has been an unmitigated disaster from start to finish. So let's get to the finish and get the fuck out of here. But first,
and get to ending.
We got some plugs, and we're not talking about Elon Musk and his hair plugs. We're talking about shit that you can buy. First off, Patreon. Become a supporter of the show. There are now 3 tiers where you can support the show. There's the $1 tier, the 40k Friendo, where you don't get anything except a nice feeling that you're helping 2 friends do the best they can at being the worst that they are. There's the $5 tier for the Badcast Bad Boys, where you get access to all of our subscriber-only content, which we have a couple of episodes. We have the Terra High Tale in full. We're going to be releasing an episode next week that is... we actually don't even know what we're going to be doing for it yet, but it's going to be released next week, and it's subscriber only, and that's the $5 tier. And then, Campbell, there's the 40k Fuckboi tier, which is set at the perfect number, $6.90. And if you want to be a 40k Fuckboi, then you can, and you don't get anything else except the satisfaction of knowing that you're a 40k Fuckboi and they aren't.
Because you jagoffs asked for it, I made it. It gets you the exact same stuff as the $5 tier, but for almost $2 more.
No, I'm going to add some really stupid shit to it.
Okay.
We've been talking about the too bad for the Badcast supercut, where instead of deleting all the trash that I edit out of these episodes, I'll move it down to a muted track and then ripple delete that shit and put out the shit that I deleted from the podcast for people to listen to. You can start with a half
hour from this episode.
It'll be nothing but mouth sounds and ums.
The amount of people who have changed over to this dumb tier is staggering to me, because like every email we've gotten for like the week or so since we introduced that tier has just been people switching over to that.
The 40k Fuckboi tier at $6.90. Head on over to Patreon, become one of our supporters. We can't thank you enough for supporting our stupid podcast about our dumb hobby. It really blows my mind every single time that we get to do this sort of thing. And that there's people that want to hear it and want to pay us money for it. You guys are the fucking wind beneath my wings, and I'm not even fucking joking.
The pee in my balls. So that's at patreon.com/40k Badcast. And you can buy t-shirts. We at shop.spreadshirt.com/40k Badcast, where we have the Badcast Bad shirt, the Budcast Bud shirt, and soon we will have the Edging Enthusiast shirt as soon as I finalize the design with you.
I can't wait, man. I'm going to buy one. So the Badcast Bad shirt and the Budcast Bud shirt, like, I'm comfortable with wearing in public. I don't know how much use the Edging Enthusiast shirt. I'm going to buy one. I don't know how much use I'm going to get out of it.
I mean, the whole point of the show is to make things uncomfortable for you to put on your body.
The body that I'm already uncomfortable with. Let's just make things worse, shall we?
If the extremely flammable material isn't uncomfortable enough for you, the imagery will be.
So you can reach out to us and interact with us in real time. Probably the best way to do it is via Twitter. I am at DB_sleazy. He is at BrotherSRM. And you can... I haven't really been tweeting much lately, but you've had a couple of really good jokes in there.
Dude, it's a combination of me being incredibly mad about the fucking slander being brought upon Toad right now and incredibly mad about gun violence. So you get a really nice cross-section of my political views right there with my comedy.
Sweet, sweet double-header action with Campbell's Twitter. But you can also email us
mushroom-headed action
at contact@40kbadcast.com.
So if you have more pressing questions or you want to just talk to me and not Dan, email us at contact@40kbadcast.com.
It's true. Campbell does most of the email conversations with people, but I feel like that's what the people want, really. You know, you're the cool one. Sure. I'm the one who edits the episodes. That's really the only reason I'm here.
I think by being on this podcast, I am de facto not the cool one. Like, we are a boy band situation where there's not the cool one, there's not the bad one, there is the cute one, that's me, and there is the old one, and that's you.
Okay, fella. Thanks.
Love you.
Thanks, buddy. But yeah, you get at us at email. We need content for the We Make the Call situation. So send us your questions, and we will answer them on air. And finally, it's going to be coming up in the next month or two, but Adepticon registration, Campbell and I, we already have our hotel situation figured out. So we are going to be there. So when Adepticon, when they release a schedule, when they open up registration, make sure you get on that. We're going to be there, and we would love to meet listeners and hang out with you, our friends we don't know we have yet. And we'll be there. There'll be an opportunity for that in real life, IRL.
Yeah, we don't know what we'll be playing yet, but we'll be there.
All right, man. It's time for us to become the Ciao Bella Chuckleheads and say arrivederci to all you fuckos. So thanks for listening. We're the 40k Badcast. We're bad at 40k. You can too. And we'll see you in the next cartoon.
In an hour of darkness, a blind man is the best guide. In an age of insanity, look to the madman to show the way. Arrivederci, Arriva douchebags!